What's up, guys? So, beginner's guide to Enneagram. What does that mean? Basically, outlining some of the core qualities of each Enneagram type in a way that makes typing easier, Instead of like spending hours trying to figure out someone's motivation and again, because those traits are behavioral. But again, behavior matters, okay? Because all of the thing that is here is externalized. So your behavior is basically a symptom of what's here. That's it. And what's here? Your emotions and your mind. So, also some rules of Enneagram, some do's and don'ts. Let's get into it. It's going to be juicy. So, first of all, you need to understand what is Enneagram. How do we define Enneagram? So, to define Enneagram is quite simple. Your Enneagram type will kind of contain things like your ego fixations, your defense mechanisms, your identity, your perception of yourself and of others, perception of the world, your emotional processes, your reactions. All of that is going to be basically, that's going to be Enneagram. That was going to be your Enneagram type. All of those things. And not to mention, most importantly, your behavior. Because all of those things included will produce a certain behavior. You cannot basically be like, oh, I hate vulnerability, or I don't like vulnerability, and then act like a soft individual who simply wants to cry because he saw a puppy. That's not how this works. What's here will be reflected outside. Remember that. It's a big one. Okay, moving on. Another thing. Big one. Don'ts. We don't type with fears and desires. Okay, because listen. Take my type, for example, 8 core. It's fear of what? Vulnerability and fear of kind of being controlled, right? And I'm going to tell you this. Does that mean that every other type has no issues being controlled and AIDS do? Which basically means every type has a kink for being a slave, like it's some BDSM fest, but AIDS don't. Of course, it's flawed logic if you really think about it, because, listen, any type can fear vulnerability. In fact, a 6 core will relate to this way more, because they're pushing down on their vulnerability consciously. For an 8 core, it's unconscious. So if you ask them, do you feel vulnerability? They'll say no. What vulnerability? Again, it's just simply a bad way to type someone. It's not gonna work, You will mistype many people, and it's normal because it's the beginning of your journey in Enneagram. That's what I did when I first started Enneagram Institute. I'm gonna learn. That's normal. But now we know more. Now we updated our knowledge and we're going forward. So ignore all that crap unless, again, you want to be like a Redditor. You want to be like a person who is on Reddit. 99% of people there are mistyped. And when you asking yourself why? Well, because, again, fears and desires. Cut that shit. No place for it at all. Secondly, we do not type by instinctual variants. The first one and the second point are very important because both lead to people mistyping themselves. Okay? Remember this. I treat them as separate concepts. So many of my friends, even myself included, mistyped myself because I simply typed with instinctual variants and I thought I'm this type, so it must translate to my type in subtypes. Not at all, okay? It's as simply as a completely separate concept. If you want a correct typing, you have to type by subtypes. That's just the only way. Ignore this crap, oh, I'm social, must mean I'm a social 5 or a social 6. Not necessarily, again. Those traits will manifest differently, and a sexual 1 is not going to be love obsessed like, for example, sexual 5. They're both a sex dom, but it's going to be completely different. The manifestation is going to be different. So again, it works differently. Stick to subtypes. Now, behavior, another thing. It is important. Okay, forget all the Reddit shit. Behavior is extremely important because it doesn't matter what you say if you don't act it. Simple as. So some of the notable traits. Let's get on. All right, I'm gonna kind of provide you examples in a video format, and you can kind of see maybe how it might manifest or what example I'm going to be using. And I'm going to be, of course, writing which subtype this individual that I'm showing is to kind of make it clear for you. Now, what do I pay attention to when I'm trying to figure out one core? I look at for someone who's very critical of the external world. I look at someone who's very disciplined. Again, an individual with high conscientiousness. Okay, so a disciplined individual. I look at for certain rigidity in emotional expression. Again, depends on the subtype, because sexual one, as you'll see, is quite different in a sense that they express their anger and they can be hyper animated. But every other emotion falls flat. So there is still rigidity. There's this rigidity and expression regardless. I look at for dominance. And this is a surprise. Why would you associate dominance with 1 instead of 8? Both are dominant. It's different though. For one core, this dominance is to instill order on the environment, to take control of your environment. And the reason Hudson is, you think this is 8, but this is actually 1. So it's an important detail. And also a certain quality of I know the truth or I know the way. This completely almost close-mindedness and narrow-mindedness when dealing with situations with an extremely laser tunnel vision worldview. Very narrow-minded individual. Okay? Very rigid. So that's what I look for. Dominance, I look for rigidity, discipline. I'm going to run the clip and you'll see.
Year round, why don't you bulk up, put on some more size? Why do you stay lean year round? I stay lean year round so that I'm nicer to my people, nicer to my wife, nicer to everybody and kinder. Because the fact is, when we break character, when we break our plan, when we just go pleasure seek, everything ceases to please. Nothing pleases us at this point. So we're seeing the faults in everybody around us. We become a critical asshole that's not supplying solutions. So we end up not constructively criticizing. We're just criticizing at that point because we feel like shit about ourselves. So the thing is, what we ingest is the key to self-mastery. The key to self-mastery is through what we ingest. And in the penitentiary, I learned if I limit desires, if I limit food intake, limit all these things that people were chasing, I wouldn't go outside the fence. I wouldn't go into the past. I wouldn't go into the future. I wouldn't crave anything other than what was under my control. And that's the secret. Fully submersed in the now, fully in control of what's in your control. In all reality, if you were disciplined enough, right now with enough discipline, the job you have, the food you got, you can be ripped and rich in an allotted amount of time, depending on the time frame. But guess what? I teach the 10-year plan. I didn't get nowhere till 10 years into this. That's basically it. Do you have the long view to write out your vision, your plan, your goals, your dreams for a 10-year period? That's what it took for me. That's when it starts to really develop. Originally, it starts off juvenile. The discipline is just, I want to look better. I want to be buffer. But then you start to see it. You start to uncover clues. You start to see all the little variables. Everything starts to take shape. And you start to be like, I'm chasing this feeling that I'm in control, that I'm unstoppable. I would be sitting on my rack. Everybody's eating ho-hos, cupcakes, fucking Twinkies and shit. In the pen, they call them Zuzus and Wham Whams. That's just what they call them. They're fucking weirdos. They got weirdo names for every fucking thing. That's it. And so we would just literally sit back and I would have the bare essentials and let it just push me. Pushing down all that fucking desire for anything. In all reality, if you want contentment in this life, it comes from moderating desire, not flying to your dreams.
So, when it comes to type 2, what do I pay attention to? Right? I look for someone who's very people-oriented, clearly trying to influence people, trying to get a certain reaction out of people. Right? I look for someone who is emotionally driven, someone who can be histrionic, someone who clearly is guided by his emotionality, his emotions, his ability to influence the emotional sphere he's in, to impact the emotional sphere, to impact emotions of others. I look at that too. I look at their ego and image, Their self-perception, that's important. I look at, or do they have inflated sense of self? If they do, I have a good case for a 2 instead of 3, right? Natural, simply, a very natural inflated sense of self that they simply, when you're affirming their sense of self by saying that they're amazing, you're simply affirming something that they already believe is true. That, of course, skyrockets the ego even bigger and makes it even more grandiose. But that's an important information. So often pleasure seeking. So there can be hedonism and also center of attention. Again, it's an archetype. It's a person who can be very attention grabbing, flirtatious, knowing how to make a certain impact, knowing how to spark a certain influence and have power over people. That is the kind of person that you're going to be dealing with, So that's what I look for. When it comes to 3 core, I look for pragmaticism. So if the person is pragmatic, I look for, are they driven, ambitious, achievement oriented? I look for those things, right? Do they need to earn their worth by achieving certain external standards of success, of beauty, of what's good, what's acceptable, what they should do? Right? That's what I pay attention to. So it's an individual who is striving to reach a certain ideal of performance, of excellence, again, just to meet it. So then, by meeting that, they're affirming their worth. So unlike the second type 2, in the case of type 3, in a way, they feel that they need to earn this by becoming all of this. So they try to become this hyper-driven, ambitious individual or attractive individual. Again, it depends, right? But that's how this really works. So, example.
And especially another thing is you seem like you really love yourself, and which is a good thing. But how does someone go about loving themselves?
I'm proud of myself, and I deserve to be.
Yeah.
Most people don't deserve to be proud of themselves.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. A lot of people say, I have confidence issues. And I say, if I was you, I would have confidence issues. Of course. I completely understand why you have confidence issues. You're a dork. But we have to be realistic here. We have to be absolutely not only realistic, because the world is brutal and it's harsh. If you're not proud of yourself, you probably don't deserve to be proud of yourself, so you're not going to feel happy. And you just talked about confidence. Confidence comes from competence. The reason I'm confident is because I'm good at everything.
Right.
I'm good at everything I do. The things I'm not good at, I'm not confident in, of course. And I know what they are. I don't do them very often. I've now created my reality to the point where I don't do anything I'm not good at.
You just hire.
I either hire or I just don't want to do it. Like I don't play darts.
Yeah.
I'm not good at darts, right? I do what I'm good at. Yeah. So yeah, I'm absolutely and utterly confident because I'm absolutely and utterly competent, and that takes practice and discipline and motivation, and you need to fail a few times. You need to get up. And like I said earlier, when I learned my entire mindset in professional fighting and chess, the two combined, that's how it comes down to. And when people say, I have competence issues, usually I can look them up and down and say, yeah, if I was you, I would completely and utterly struggle with competence issues. Because the world is competitive, and there's men like me on the planet and friends like mine on the planet, and you're competing against us for money, for girls, for status, for resource, and you're going to be destroyed and decimated the entire time. So of course you have confidence issues when you can be annihilated in real time by the competitor.
And now a 4 core, right? I would say with a 4 I look for some basics like emotional depth. That's an obvious one, right? Can you be a 4 core without an emotional depth? No, you can't. But I look for tendency towards fantasy, and this is something people sleep on. But a 4 core will have a very deep internal world. Again, towards fantasy, fantastical thinking. Those people can be extremely creative. Those people can be very gifted in their kind of creating their inner world. So it can be portrayed through poetry, can be portrayed through writing, anything. But there is always going to be this creativity and this deep internal world, fantastical world, right? So remember that. It's a big one and people sleep on it. We have high self-consciousness, and I know some of you guys have this funny perception of sexual 4 as this like Chadwick Sigma male who just does what he wants and doesn't care. It's absolutely untrue. People read Shameless and they believe that's true. But the fact is that they do struggle, all A4s struggle deeply with self-consciousness and their self-worth. So what you'll see with a 4 core is struggling with self-consciousness. That's something that's inevitable and it's going to happen. I also try to look for, is there something again with their ego? Do they feel like they're broken? Do they feel like something's lacking, that they're always looking to affirm their identity, to find their true self? Right? Are they always looking for that because something is inherently lacking in them? I look for that. I look for idealization of the other. So again, romanticism or idealizing the other individual, that can happen too. So I look for all of those qualities. Then we have 5 core, and with a 5 I look for coldness, I look for introversion obviously, and I look for tendency for abstraction, and people who, unlike 4s which tend to be drawn to fantasy, a 5 core is more, again, they're abstract but not really in the emotional sense, right? So it's way different, you know. It's not really in the fantastical emotional world, not so much, but still quite abstract people who think over, who are thinking over action. That's an important distinction, which causes certain inertia, right? They're quite detached. So I look for emotional detachment. I look for being an independent thinker. And this is a big thing between a 5 and 6. How do you tell the difference? Well, a 6 still relies on external sources, like an SO6 relies on ideologies of other people and always adhering to a certain standard, while a 5 is way more of an independent thinker. You'd see them often breaking those patterns and really acting out of, thinking out of the box. So again, independent thinker, it's a big one. And often quite eccentric, quite strange people, you know. You might look at them and be like, oh, that's a virgin, oh, that's a stalker. So again, weirdos, they can be weirdos. But props to you guys, you're cool.
Why should I live in history, huh? Look, I don't want to know anything anymore. This is a world where nothing is solved. When someone once told me time is a flat circle. Everything we've ever done or will do, we're gonna do over and over and over again. And that little boy and that little girl, they're gonna be in that room again. And again. And again. Forever.
So with a 6, actually no, example. With a 6, I'm going to look for a person who's observant. I'm going to look for a person who's quite inhibited in a sense where there is not as much open and free emotional expression. Right? They clearly are more a bit withdrawn to the shell. Even sexual 6, which can have their moments of impulsivity and, again, hostility, at the end of the day, on average, they're more pulled in, right? Inhibited, thinking before they act, again, generally speaking. I look for someone who is quite distrustful, pays attention to that, pays attention to those signals. Someone who's quite vigilant. I look at that too. I look at someone who adheres to external standards for certainty and security. Again, we see that with SO6, adhering to logic or someone's ideology, someone's writing. And many SO6s on personality database, for example. So they do only focus on theory, reject any kind of concrete data. So that's also something that happens. with SP6 relying on someone else for security, and SX6 still relying on certain ideals, be it beauty, be it masculinity, or acting a certain way to be accepted. All of that still applies. So 7. With a 7, I look for idealism. I look for someone who can be quite strategic, oriented towards the future. How can I turn this situation and make it into something that benefits me? How can I turn this situation and turn it around to my benefit, to my advantage? I look at someone who is a charlatan. You'd consider them a charlatan. That's what I look for. I look for someone who is witty, can be very talkative, talkative, persuasive, charming, knowing how to manipulate people, knowing how to work with people. I look for that. And I look for intellectual narcissism, the ability to be sure of themselves in the realm of using their wit to get out of situations, using their ability to plan. All of that is something that I'm going to be looking at. So, now, with an 8 core, I look at rebelliousness. I look at as that is a key quality to an 8 core, really, rebellion. So rebelliousness is basically a disregard for external authority, and a 6 core, a sexual 6, can be also rebellious, but there's a difference. When an 8 core rebels, he's really not paying attention to everything around. He's going his way, and he really is not paying attention. He doesn't care. 6 core always looks, oh shit. There's this almost always vigilant. That's the difference in rebellion. Now, 8s I often look for present-mindedness. Is this individual present in the moment? Focus on the concrete, grounded reality, tangible reality. Are they neglectful of the past and the future? Do they don't care? I live with the situations that are given to me in this present. I look for someone who has expansive behavior. They can be quite expansive in their presence. They can be overwhelming. They can be brash. They can be loud. They can, want to instill their will on the environment. They can like challenges, challenging other people and being challenged. I look for that. I look for someone who is very action-oriented and excessive. So need for stimulation that needs to be satiated at all times. Constant need for stimulation, which of course is a result of boredom. An 8 core is a very bored individual who needs a lot of stimulation, and he needs strong stimulation. That's why we see 8 cores acting in very intense, extreme ways, because again, it takes a lot for them to experience things on an emotional level. Because, callous. Example?
Então, pra mim não afeta em nada, isso é lógico. Isso não é nada pra mim, não é nada. Eu sou campeão, você não é nada. Você não é nada. Eu cheguei aqui, eu sou o rei. Eu cheguei aqui e trouxe o sol, só chove nessa cidade. Cheguei aqui e já trouxe o sol pra você, pelo menos sorrir. Você estar aqui hoje. Eu sou o campeão. Eu sou o campeão. Eu sou o campeão.
You're looking at the king. You're looking at the king.
Filha da puta.
Welcome to Era. Welcome to Era. Era, this is my house country.
I'm the great.
Next time I see you again. Next time you see me again. Next time you see me again.
Você sabe que você não tá na frente dos outros. Você só fala na frente dos outros. Otário.
Every time it's ever happened, it's like a shot of adrenaline. And I could feel the dopamines and the adrenaline and all these things getting released into my body that at that moment, I'm not even human anymore.
He's been doing this for a long, long time. He's as real as they come. He's been literally fighting for everything he's got on the streets of Miami, backyard type stuff since a teenager.
Just weren't really necessary. Maybe
They were super necessary. And rub it in your face so you and guys like you could see it and be like, maybe I don't talk so much shit because when I cross one of these real motherfuckers, they're gonna make me pay for it, man. They're gonna embarrass the shit out of me. And it's not over for Ben either. He still has to deal with me. If I see him at Whole Foods, I'm gonna still slap that dude up because I don't like him.
Now, with a 9, I look at someone who's more phlegmatic in temperament. Someone who can actually be usually passive. A 9 core can have its moments when, oh, you're crossing the line, back off, and then they can attack or just kind of push you back. But generally speaking, on average, they're quite docile and passive individuals. I look for someone who is very grounded and sensorical. Right? I look at someone who clearly indulges not in the mind, yet indulges in the physical world. So food, comforts, again, a lot of physical inertia in a sense where they keep indulging in the physical sensorical world. I look at for someone who can, and on a healthy level, can be numb to subtle things, to abstractions, to emotionality. Basically, there is a concept of inner deadness that's present in a 9 core, kind of the same way it is for an 8 core. So those are quite similar in the way, because an 8 has inner deadness, which is why an 8 core needs that intense stimulation to feel alive. And the 9 core again also has that inner deadness, which he's trying to fulfill that kind of void by indulging in physical comforts. So all of those things I do look for. Now, that's basically it. So those were all like notable traits of Enneagram. You know, you understand the core principles and you kind of see more or less the core attributes you should be paying attention to. Of course, remember guys, there are subtypes which have different manifestations. So that's even more complex. But this is just for people who are new to Enneagram, who want to kind of have a shortcut. Because no one else really does it. No one else tells you shit. So here you are. But anyway, I'm sure probably we will... again, there's so much information to cover. We'll probably talk about subtypes. You know, I have plans like that, you know, kind of really diving deep in how each subtype manifests with a lot of footage, with a lot of kind of ways to portray it. You know, again, that's the way I'm thinking. But we'll see. Anyway, peace out.